What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and welcome back to another Dresden Files reread challenge vlog. So if you're new around here, I have been rereading the entire series of the Dresden Files. It was one of my favorite series when I was a teenager up into my early 20s, and my best friend Heather recently read all of the books, and I decided that I would listen to her peer pressure and catch up on the books. But I am anything if not a completionist, and I hadn't read the books in so long that I decided to reread the entire series in a very short amount of time. So I am trying to read all these books before August 29th, which is now less than a month away, and that is the start of Dragon Con, and Heather will be there, and Jim Butcher will be there, so that was why I set that date. But we are currently reading book 11 in the series, that's Turncoat, and recently I decided to combine some of these vlogs. I was doing individual ones, and I'll link the playlist below, but my last vlog I decided I was going to combine them. So the last vlog I did books 8, 9, and 10, and we're going to be doing books 11, 12, and 13 in this vlog because it's a short amount of time, and honestly I think it'll be more digestible that way. I've made this decision. Plus, I think it'll be more fun because the last vlog will just be for the final book. That's number 17, Battleground. And I am looking forward to being completely caught up because from what Jim Butcher's website says, he's currently working on book 18. So, you know, hopefully sooner rather than later, I will get to read a new book with Heather. So that's very fun. But yeah, before I was trying to remember things that I remembered. I was trying to recall when I was going into the books, like things that I could remember, but I've kind of let that go on the wayside because I don't really remember much. I remember like character arcs and major events, but not necessarily like specifically to certain books, and I think that has made it a challenge as I've gotten further along. Plus, we're on a time crunch. So I finished Small Favor on Monday. Today is Wednesday, and I am halfway through Turncoat right now, which is the first book for this vlog. So Turncoat is, again, the 11th book in the Dresden Files series, and honestly, already a bit of an improvement from White Knight and Small Favor for me personally. The thing is, I can't really pinpoint why that is. Everything that happened in White Knight and in Small Favor was interesting. Like, it was the story itself was interesting, but I honestly couldn't even tell you what happened in White Knight. Now I'm like trying to think about it. When I review the vlog that'll come out before this one, I will remember. But this is what happens when you read books in quick succession. It all starts to merge together, which is fine. But I don't know, something about this one, I think because it feels a little more insular in the storytelling than I think Small Favor and White Knight did, that it didn't take so long to build up the story because our major plot was pretty easy. So the plot starts out with Morgan, who we have met from the beginning. He was basically Dresden's parole officer at the start of the series, which is so long ago now, and he's a bit of a hard ass and very black and white when it comes to how he handles the laws of magic that the White Council has set apart. So, you know, he's kind of an asshole and not well liked by many people, but he does have an incredible amount of integrity, which makes this story kind of interesting as well, because Dresden is having to reckon with the idea that Morgan, who's now put kind of in Dresden's place, so he is believed to have killed one of the 7 members of the White Council, Lafortier, I think. I forget. He was just an ass that didn't really care much for Dresden when he came in for his hearing on what happened with his old mentor. Kind of where the start of who Harry Dresden is really gets the ball rolling. Very formative for him, besides, like, you know, obviously having his mentor in Elaine, but this was like probably that pivotal point for Harry in his life that really started him down this trajectory of fighting for the little guy. So Morgan ends up at his doorstep, beaten, bruised, pretty fucked up, to be honest, and essentially tells Harry that he's been framed for this killing by whoever else is in this Black Council, even though Morgan doesn't want to think there's a Black Council and that there's no, like, major conspiracy or anything like that. And so Harry pretty quickly takes Morgan's side, and I think it makes sense because, like I said, Morgan is so black and white and is so dedicated to the council that even when it seems like he is such a hard ass and really truly believes that if you deal in any kind of black magic, you're a danger to the council and society as itself. That is his firm belief. And so I think Harry came to that conclusion that Morgan's dislike of him wasn't a particularly personal one, at least in the area he was looking for Harry to slip up. I mean, he doesn't particularly like Harry, but that's not the reason that he was always such a hard ass on him. It's just like, the line is drawn there. And I think we get a couple characters who are like that. You know, Michael is kind of like that. Murphy is kind of like that. But Murphy's more pliable than Michael is, and then Michael is kind of the flip side of Morgan because he believes in the good of everyone, whereas Morgan believes in the darkness in people. So they're kind of, you know, foils of one another in a way. But so Harry takes it upon himself to try to figure out who this person is. And that's another reason that Harry kind of takes up this case, is because he's like, if Morgan dies, this person is going to continue being an informant on the White Council and can continue to get people killed. And in addition to Morgan being a hard ass, he's also very strong. He's one of the older wardens, and they really need someone like Morgan. They can't afford to lose somebody as talented in magic, so old enough to do some serious damage. So it would be a big loss to their cause as well for Morgan to go out, because Morgan has a lot of skills. It's also been very interesting because, you know, Harry is in a similar place. He is in like the reverse role of where he was when he was a kid with Molly now. And to see the interactions that Molly and Morgan are having, I think is so interesting, because Molly is having such a visceral reaction to him and really still grappling with the idea, like letting Morgan's opinion of her sway the idea that she cannot make her own choices. And I think Harry is trying to instill a very different idea in her and wants to be able to train her in a way that's not as destructive. So like him and Morgan talk about how they learned to do shields, and I believe it was in Small Favor. At the beginning, they were throwing snowballs at Molly to teach her how to learn to make her shield. And he talks about how he was pelted with baseballs. And then Morgan says that Lucio, who was his mentor, threw rocks at him. So it's like, you know, he's like, pain is a good motivator, but there's other motivations. And I think Harry is really trying to define, like, you know, it's like, it's kind of like the old school of child rearing as well, of like spanking your children, hitting your children as a good way to teach discipline, where people are looking now and saying, or a way to make less well-adjusted people, and maybe it's not the best motivator in the world. So I think it's kind of a reflection of that as well, and like the change in understanding psychology of children and mentorship and training and teaching. So, you know, that's all pretty interesting, and I am liking that dynamic. We're getting a lot of Anastasia in here because she was Donald's, that's his real name, that's his first name, and Morgan's teacher. She was the Harry to Morgan was her apprentice. So she's kind of gotten involved. She's working with Harry. Of course, the White Court gets involved again, and Anastasia finds out that Thomas is Harry's brother. I think that their relationship is really interesting. They do appear to be dating. I wouldn't say that it's as strong of a relationship that as he had with Susan, because I don't think they're in love. I think they're having a good time. I think Harry thought he couldn't do casual, but it seems like they're doing dating. You know, they're going to drive-in movies, they're having fun, she's got a key, but I don't think like either of them sees this as like married with children kind of situation. Because I mean, secretly Harry is not so secretly in love with Murphy anyway, so just saying. Yeah, there's also a skinwalker in here. Like, this is a beastie that's from North America, and because it's from North America, the Native Americans have the most data on it. Is kind of how it's laid out, which I think is okay. Like, you know, this is just a creature that is native to North America, therefore the Native Americans would know best about it and knew to avoid it and knew how to avoid it, whereas like the colonizers came up in and just, you know, whereas everybody else doesn't really pay attention, doesn't really know what to do. Did you hear that? Anywho, so there is also this skinwalker going around. He's captured Thomas. The skinwalker spoke, which I was like, oh, I forgot he spoke. But he's a pretty powerful little beastie. Yeah, so Harry is basically going after Thomas, trying to figure out how to get Thomas. He wants to trade. The skinwalker wants Harry to trade Morgan for Thomas, which obviously Harry's not going to do, but we'll see how they get through it, because he's working with Lara again, and she's manipulative, conniving, and really good at plans. So it's hard not to like her. I know that like the way Dresden paints her and how she paints herself is she's like, I'm a monster, that's who I am. But it's hard not to like her. I think she's much better than Bianca was. Kind of I think Bianca was like the trial for Lara, and Lara is much more successful at being the kind of character that Bianca hoped to be. So I always enjoy when she pops on in to the story. So I'm currently about 50% of the way through. I don't have the book with me. It's downstairs and I don't feel like getting it. But we're 50% of the way through. I'm hoping to finish it today at some point. I was able to get the audiobook for that, so I'm reading it together with my book. And then I also already have changes and ghost story on Libby as well. So we should be able to hop on. Oh no, I'm waiting for ghost story. But I already have changes, so we can hop right into that. We are trying to quickly make our way through because, like I said, we have less than a month left to finish 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. 7 books. We got a little behind, people. So I'm gonna wrap it there for now, and we'll check in once I finish Turncoat. Ooh. Oh my goodness. This floor is not comfy enough to be on the ground, but that's where we are. Hello. It is Friday, August 2nd, and I have succeeded in finishing Turncoat, the 11th book in the Dresden Files series. Pew! I've finished reading Turncoat, and I don't know why, but I was so emotional at the end of this book. I think that Morgan's ending was so sad, but you know, he went out the way he was gonna go out. I don't know. Yeah, like I just finished reading it last night and I was laying down to go to sleep and I was just so sad. And maybe it's because I know that the story is gonna get even darker and sadder. It's sad. Even darker and more sad, even darker and sadder. Yeah, as we go along. But yeah, I mean, there were so many things that were pretty sad. So, like I said, Morgan dying to save Dresden and basically allow himself to take the fall so Captain Lucio didn't have to, because we find out that her mind was messed with, as Molly hinted at when she was doing things that were not so good. And Morgan agreeing or saying that he didn't tell anybody about Molly looking into Anastasia's brain. Yeah, it was depressing. Depressing to find out that it was unclear if Anastasia was interested in Harry because of the nudge and the manipulation, which kind of kept her from keeping herself focused on the problems at hand, and her and Harry's last conversation and kind of ending of their relationship. You know, I like them together. Like I said, I didn't see them as long-term, even from a perspective of just like reading the couple books that were in and disregarding his relationship with Murphy, as I didn't see it as long-term either way, but it was still like sad that it was unclear of like for both of them what her motivations were because of the mind manipulation. I will also say, I don't think I mentioned this when I was talking about it, but I had an idea that Peabody was the informant, the traitor. As soon as he came up in the conversation, like as soon as he popped into the story, my brain was like, oh, it's him. Yep, it's him. I don't know if that's like a deep recesses of my mind were pulling back a memory, or if it was just identifying. Again, Butcher doesn't really like drop random people into a story for no reason. So I was like, Pencil Pusher is a really good person to be orchestrating things, because no one's paying attention to them and nobody wants to deal with all of those things. So it's really easy to make that person instrumental in bringing things down. So it made sense. The other thing that was really sad was the whole situation with Thomas. His conversation with Harry, clearly seeing that he's coming from a different angle with things right now is interesting. So it was just, yeah, Turncoat. I really enjoyed Turncoat. Like after White Knight and Small Favor, where I was just kind of feeling like they were dragging a little bit, I thought that Turncoat really picked up the pace for me, like the style of it. I really enjoyed it more. And in addition to that, I don't know, I just thought there was a lot of heart in this story. Not that there weren't in the other two, but just something felt different. I can't really put my finger on it. Maybe it was a mood thing, I'm not sure. But I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Even though I don't know. White Knight and Small Favor, I still gave 4 stars, but now I'm kind of like, I did not enjoy them as much as I enjoyed Turncoat. But I am feeling a little scared to go back into changes, because I know how crazy that's gonna be. I mean, this isn't a spoiler if you've read the back of the book, but if you know, Harry has a daughter with Susan that he's not aware of. And I think I've alluded to this a couple times because I knew it was coming up, but a very key point in the story, and also very important because Harry talks so much about the importance of having a family and never having a family before, and then he finds Thomas, and now he finds out he has a daughter, and then there's a more family to come, which I will keep that underneath the wraps until we get to the story where it's revealed, which I don't remember which book it is. I think it might be in Changes as well. I think so. But it is an intense book and leads to Ghost Story, which, as I mentioned before, is currently my favorite Dresden Files book, period. But we will see if that holds up. I don't know if I'm going to get any reading in today. It is the start of Houston Restaurant Week, so we're probably going to go and try a restaurant out tonight. But we shall see. Anyway, that is my check-in for Turncoat. On to the next one, baby. Howdy, folks. It is Sunday, August 4th, and I have just started reading Changes. I don't remember if I read the back of the book for you, but essentially this story revolves around Harry finding out that he, in fact, has a daughter that Susan has kept from him over the last, like, 8-ish or so years, 8 to 10, something like that. And the Red Court has taken them. So the Countess is getting revenge on Harry for her dearly departed husband. And so Susan is reached out to Harry to let him know he has a daughter, and to figure out a way to get her back. So I know how this book ends, but we'll keep that to the end. But I was just saying, so I was just filming for the Full Moon Readathon, and I was really gushing about how emotional I am getting now that as we're getting to these later half of the books. Like I said, Turncoat made me feel pretty sad at the end, and as Changes started, I just felt so bad for both Harry and Susan, because I could see from both of their perspectives where they're coming from in this instance, and it is tough. I was also talking about how as an adult, like not just like a new fresh adult out of high school, but as somebody who's, could at this point have had a kid who would be around the same age, how horrible that situation would be, and like the hard choice that Susan made, considering her and Harry's lifestyles and the amount of people who are after them to give up her daughter and hide her, opposed to having her in her life. And I can definitely see where Susan was coming from there. I think that Harry's reaction is also justified, especially considering his own trauma with losing his parents at such an early age, and the way he grew up, and kind of how that all turned out for him. So I see where both of them are coming from. So it makes it particularly hard to think about that situation, and I feel very sad about it. So I'm about 8% through the audiobook right now, and I had to take a break because I was like, oof, maybe it's a little heavy for my Sunday, so maybe I'm going to chill. But I am going to pick it up probably tonight. We are going to watch House of the Dragon, and maybe the crazy dragon fights will really get me prepared for the emotional roller coaster that is going to be Book 12 in the Dresden Files, Changes. And so that is my update for you. I have been trying to post my previous Dresden Files vlog, which will hopefully be up by now, for the 8th, 9th, and 10th book, but for some reason, it took 1,001 years to get this video to upload. And as I'm looking at it, it looks like right now it has finally uploaded. So I'm going to publish that right now, even though, as I said, House of the Dragon is about to start. So we know nobody's gonna be watching this baby, but we got it together. Oh my goodness. And that was an hour long. So I'm guessing this is going to be about just as long, because we got a lot to talk about in these next two books. Oh, excuse me. But that is my update for you right now. So stay spicy, y'all. We'll chat soon. What's up? So I am now 2/3 of the way through Changes, and boy howdy, I am not okay. I am not okay. I am thoroughly enjoying this book. It has been chronically readable, but I put it down. I was not feeling well yesterday, so I read a lot of it. But I thought about reading it last night, and I'm anxious. Like, I feel anxious just thinking about reading this book because I know how it's gonna end. I know what the ending is already. I do remember the ending of this. So I am feeling very anxious, and part of me does not want to read the last 200 pages because I am so emotional about everything that's going on. But let's chat about a few highlights that I was pretty excited about in this book. I think I mentioned in my last vlog where I read 8, 9, and 10. And I think it was in Small Favor. Yeah, I think it was in Small Favor. Yes, it was in Small Favor that I said I finally remember where Guard came from. And I was right. I was right. So she works for a consulting company. Let me see what they're called. I found it. Of Monarch Securities. And essentially what happens is Harry goes and reaches out to Marcone and is trying to get some help. And in typical fashion, Marcone and him have some common interests because the Red Court is encroaching on Marcone's territory, and so he has Guard reach out to her employee Monarch Securities, and her employer is very eager to see him. So Guard takes him through the ways. Oh my goodness, Ash is just like sitting on Gavin right now. Look how cute. Oh, that's so cute, Gavin. I'm doing sprints right now, so that's what we're doing. Anyway, so he goes in, and essentially, I won't, it's fun. I've been waiting for this. It's the character, Don Vlad blah blah blah, whose name I can't pronounce correctly, is Odin. So Guard goes by the name Sigrun, and I will be honest, I'm not like super good with let's see, Sigrun, Norse mythology. Okay. Okay, that's what I thought. So Sigrun is according to the ghouls, is a Valkyrie, a female deity who chose those worthy of entry into the halls of Valhalla. She was associated with bravery, victory, and the fate of warriors in battle, which would explain why she knew that Harry was supposed to die in that alley that day. But she takes him to Monarch Securities, which essentially is the remnants of the Norse gods run by Odin, and he meets Odin, and I was so excited because I don't know why, but that Odin's character specifically really sticks out in my brain, and so I knew that he was coming into play at some point soon, and so I was excited to see him there. And he basically gives Harry the lowdown on what the Red Court's trying to do, and they're essentially trying to do what Victor Sells did, but on a grand scale, and do a bloodline curse against Harry, which Harry doesn't know the full ramifications of that. And since I don't know if I think it has to be revealed in this book, I would say, but there's another big reveal coming for poor Harry, who just can't catch a break. I'm making jewelry as we're talking, so if you're wondering what I'm looking at, that would be it. So I was super excited about that. Like I said, I had a feel. I was like, oh yeah, that's where that gets pulled in, is that Guard is a Valkyrie. So basically Harry is really coming up empty on a lot of different things. So he's trying to find some allies to help him out to avoid essentially doing some things that, you know, he has been avoiding for a while, like choosing some of the more soul-sucking choices that he could grab power at, you know, power that he's been offered time and time again, and he refuses. But he's kind of getting backed into a corner here. So it's just really sad again and again. Like, it's just really depressing. He ends up, I'm trying to think of other things. Oh, Leah's back, which is fun. Find out that Leah has been protecting Harry in the ways, in the Never Never, for a very long time, because Harry is being, what's the word? What is the word? Harry is being framed for the explosion that happens in his office building by Rudolph, who, you remember, he works for Internal Affairs now. And it comes to pass that Rudolph perhaps is being used by some of these forces that Harry has been fighting against for a little while. And he had to essentially hide all his contraband, hide all his magical contraband before the FBI got there, because Murphy got to him first to let him know what was going on, because Murph is a real one. And he ends up going to the Never Never and gets attacked by a centipede, and he ends up burying the stuff in the garden, but then finds out from Leah, because she shows up after the raid, taking out Susan and Martin for a hot sec, and is like, look, I captured the people trying to break into your apartment. But he basically finds out that she's been protecting him by keeping this crazy garden where his apartment is, so that, you know, some baddies don't come and attack Harry at night. And then we also find out that Harry's mother left him this jewel. And this jewel essentially, like, so his mother was called, like, Morgan Le Fay, and Margaret Le Fay, not Morgan. I'm thinking of King Arthur, which, I mean, we talk a lot about Merlin in this book, so I can't blame myself. But Margaret Le Fay, and we found out from Lucio a little while back that the reason his mother was called that is because she was exceptional of traveling through the Never Never. Like, she knew more than, like, even most fairies knew about the Never Never. And so the legacy that she passed down to Harry is this gem where she recorded all the ways that she's found and things you should know about it. So Harry is able to use that his advantage to get to places faster and figure out what the Red Court is doing. So this is all happening before he meets Odin. But there are just some things, I'm not going in any particular order, these are just things I was thinking about as I've been reading the book. We finally see Thomas again. You know, he's not as off as he was at the end of Turncoat, but at the same time, like, it is sad what happened with Molly and him, of them soul gazing, and then essentially Molly wanting to help him because, you know, Molly's a bit of an empath, so she can feel the sorrow that Thomas has. And then Thomas is really hungry after fighting the Ick, I think is what Harry keeps referring to it as, that attacked Rudolph's place, and Harry having his encounter with the Eves, which are these Red Court vampire, like, hitman team duo that are kind of kooky. So, you know, Thomas has to run off because he basically tries to eat Molly. Which brings us to something I was thinking about, the whole Molly question here. So I had said in Proven Guilty that for a long time I've found Molly to be annoying. And I don't think as an adult I find her to be annoying. I think what I find to be annoying is the conversations that surround Molly. Because constantly we come up to this idea that Molly is like, she's in love with Harry, obviously, you know, she had a big crush on him as she was a kid, which I think makes sense. Like, I don't think that's weird. But what I do think is weird is that we keep like putting it out there, and then like we had Susan basically telling Harry like, you need to live your life and blah, blah, blah. And then at first I was irritated because I'm like, this has got to stop. He has known Molly since she was 12. There's a huge age difference. He's clearly not interested in it. And I don't know why we keep pushing this narrative. I don't really see the value in it. And I just think it kind of taints this relationship a little bit that he has with Molly as his apprentice. I mean, it shows why her actions are so strange, but just like the idea of other people constantly talking about it bothers me a little bit. And I think this just goes back to the fact that when we were introduced to Molly, she was 12, which is fine. But then like when she's becomes more of a main player in the story, she's 17. And Harry is in a role as a mentor, a teacher, and so I find this entire conversation to be very weird. Like, if anything, I think the conversation should be more of like Harry having to have that talk with Molly again to explain to her that, you know, he loves her in more of a paternal way and this relationship just isn't gonna happen. Coming back to the conversation of like Harry just really struggling to get a win in here is essentially when Harry goes back to his apartment after fighting with Thomas and Molly, the Eaves twins, they're not twins, they're like lovers, I don't know, the Eaves crew end up throwing a Molotov cocktail at Harry's apartment and setting it on fire, and Harry wants to save his elderly neighbors. So he ends up going and getting his landlord, who is the cutest little woman who is hard of hearing. And so I loved every scene with her. I thought they were super cute. And then he ends up falling off the ladder and paralyzing himself, which unfortunately, like, I know a lot of these books use these kind of tropes in these situations, and you know, I do think it's a bigger thing of talking about, of having books that talk about disability in a better way, especially in fantasy, because just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they can't do things. And I think that's something I'm becoming more aware of as there's more context around it and understanding it. So I hope in the future that we get more fantasy and sci-fi, paranormal, urban fantasy that is more inclusive with that. But in this situation, I understand why Harry needs to make the choice he does in falling off the ladder and in paralyzing himself, because right now he can't take the time to learn how to work with his new body and be able to do what he needs to do to save his daughter within 24 hours. So in the time frame that we're in, I understand why this would force Harry into a choice that he made, which is finally taking up the mantle of the Winter Knight, which he talks about as like the lesser of 3 evil options that he has. And he kind of gets this push. I went back and read multiple times the conversation that he had with Odin, and I'm not sure if I understand exactly what Uriel was referring to, where saying like, you know, maybe you should listen to him. I don't know if I could see in the dialogue, where if I hadn't read this book before and kind of knew it was coming, that I would have picked up on that and been able to make those connections, but maybe that's just me. But he essentially tells Harry that when you do things for love and you continue to do things for love, there's always an opportunity to find your way back to the light. So essentially saying like, you can do this and there might be a loophole that you're not aware of, in a way. So he ends up taking up the mantle as the Winter Knight. It's a whole thing. But now, right where I'm at, he has gone to the FBI office because Susan's been detained, and now we have the Eve twins about to attack the office, or in the process of attacking it. So those are my thoughts right now. I've already blabbed on for like 15 minutes, so I'm gonna close out here because I have an interview in 45 minutes anyway, so I need to kind of clean up my station here and get ready for that. So talk to you once we finished changes. And I actually feel a lot better now, having talked to the camera about this, having talked to you all about this, so thank you. Hello. I finished changes. I'm sad. I had a great time. It was fun. I kept putting it off, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and now we're gonna be finishing up, I think, A Girl's Guide to Murder. I'll be reading that tonight and tomorrow. I'm gonna take a little breaky break from my good old pal Harry Dresden before we hop into Ghost Story, which I'm super excited about. So that is pretty much it for the day. Don't have anything else planned, but I just wanted to give a quick check-in with you. And yeah. Oh my god. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Hello. It has been a little while since we last checked in. I am currently packing up. I'm going to be going back to Florida. Surprise, surprise. But wanted to check in because, hold on, let me not make a ton of noise as I cut with scissors. Because we have finished Ghost Story. And I've had like so many thoughts about it that I almost feel like I can't sort out my thoughts on Ghost Story. But I will say absolutely 100%, this has been my favorite book so far in the Dresden Files. And I will say, unless something radically changes, is my favorite book of the series. I really think what Jim Butcher did with this story, with this journey that Harry went through of learning about himself and who he really is, and kind of reconnecting with that, because a lot of what we saw is Harry being beat down and being forced into a situation that he thought he'd never accept. Okay, I did put that in there. What we got with Ghost Story was the ability for Harry to not be able to do the things that he's used to be right in the middle of things necessarily all the time, to be able to take a step back, and then also be able to see that, you know, not everything is as it seems, especially with the character of Fitz. This is my first Etsy. I opened my shop and this is my first order, which is super exciting. I think with the character of Fitz, you know, seeing a kid who is very much like him put in a bad situation and ending up doing something and hurting somebody and not really feeling like he had much of a choice, I think it brought Harry back to his own traumas, allowed him to process a lot of his trauma, especially some of the older stuff. Some of the stuff that we've touched on briefly in each one of the books about his mentor Justin and the situation that happened where he basically figured out that Justin was a bad guy and how he took advantage of him and Elaine and essentially abused them and was setting them up to do some not so nice things. And I think we've talked about that a lot in the Dresden Files, but Harry so much is going on that he's really never had the chance to process it. And then in addition to that, I think that we get more of those memories, and Harry's able to like unlock memories as they were and not what his brain thinks them to be, which I think was such an interesting literary tactic to use to allow him to really dive deeper into this deep trauma that he's had since he was 16 years old. And it's so different way to do this with a character and to use plot to allow Harry to really develop in a different way than he's been developing throughout the rest of the books. And I just really appreciated that. I think I talked a little bit about too that the first time that I read Ghost Story, I also read a nonfiction that talked a lot about urban fantasy, paranormal fantasy, and how to write them. And this process of basically, because you keep going up against big bads, your character starts to get more and more advanced and pick up more and more power. And at some point there has to be a change in the story, because if not, like, when does it stop? And when does like your character become a big bad or undefeatable and the story can't progress in the same way that it has? And I think Ghost Story does that a little bit as well. Rechanneling Harry, making him not able to do a lot of the things he's been able to do, you know, especially because if he had survived in the way that he was the new Winter Knight. So he would have had a lot more power, a lot more oomph, without having the chance to process some of the shit that happened to him, especially with his daughter and some of the choices he made, especially the choice that he made to have Molly go into his head and erase his memory of calling Kincaid and asking Kincaid to assassinate him after they were done, so he wouldn't become the monster he thinks he's gonna become. I also think for the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, the purpose of this journey too was to set up a way to give Harry's character that needed break as well before becoming the Winter Knight, to reestablish who he was after the trauma that he experienced with the Red Court and his daughter in Changes, and be able to have that pause. So when we see Harry as the Winter Knight that we'll see in Cold Days, we will understand as an audience why he's still able to fight and why he's able to still be himself, because he really was reminded in various different ways that he has choice. And that was something that they really focused on as well, is like he had choice and he should have choice. So even though Mab says that she owns him, that Harry is still his own person, and there's nothing that Mab can do to take that away from him if he doesn't allow it. So I felt like we spent an entire book basically setting up that premise, so the rest of the story we can understand Harry's actions and understand why it works that way. There was one part that I was like, okay, I will allow this. This is a bit of a stretch, but it was about Thomas, where basically Molly asked Harry before she altered his memories if she could tell Thomas, and he said no, because he thought Thomas would stop him from doing it. And so at the very end, where Harry is talking with Uriel before we get the big reveal, he essentially is like, oh, that's why I haven't gone to see Thomas, because I've secretly felt guilty even though I didn't know why, because I didn't trust him with this secret. And then we go see Thomas for like a quick second and see that he's like in a bad place, clearly feels bad that he wasn't able to save Harry and is in a downward spiral. And then we see this little vignette with him and Justine and how they're working around the idea of him being able to feed off of her. And yeah, interesting. So I was like, because I did think halfway through the book, I was like, where is Thomas? Why isn't he working with Murphy and friends? Like, it's a little strange. But then I was like, okay, fine. The rest of the story is great. Fine. Some other like more plot things that I really enjoyed. Butters having Bob. I totally forgot about that, but I definitely enjoyed seeing Butters with Bob. It was a very interesting dynamic, and having Evil Bob come into the arena and kind of bringing that part of the story back, I think is a really fun nod to some of the other books and a nice tie-in also with him being with the corpse taker, so it made a lot of sense how they would connect. I really enjoyed too the world building that we did on the spirit world side. Sir Stu, bless his heart, he was so sweet, and I was so sad that he had this situation happen to him, but he was such a fun character, and I really thought it was cool to get more into Mort's actual powers, because I think he has some really cool powers as an ectomancer. So it was just fun to have this whole, it gave us like an opportunity to see a world that Harry typically wouldn't see as well, which I thought was a really fun element of this book and kind of gave it a little bit of a newness that we haven't had in a little while. So I thought that was a cool way to employ the same place, like Chicago, but like make it different. It was really fun. The scene with Molly and the corpse taker and them having this war in her head as the corpse taker was trying to take over her body and push her out was so visually stimulating. Like, it was such a fun scene and such a fun way for Harry to learn about who killed him and realizing that he had set it up himself, like he had killed himself. I will say, like, the whole idea of the Fallen, like, whispering to Harry that there was no way for him to still be himself and he would just have to kill himself. I still don't know if some of that works for me, realistically. I feel like if I think too hard on it, I'm like, what? But I do think we're just getting a tidbit, and what I do like is that Harry's kind of confused about it too. So I feel like it means that we have some more to process, and we will see it come back later. And also, it's kind of really, I feel like, maybe introducing another big bad into this Black Council situation, besides all of these guys who are running around in this power vacuum for the Red Court and kind of the nonsense that it's making. The other thing with Murphy, like, I was so heartbroken that she was, you know, started crying at the end where Harry's spirit kind of went away as Uriel was like allowing him to see things that were going on, and Mort just like kind of hiding her so she could process that Harry was gone. I don't remember Cold Days super well, but I know that that's gonna make tensions high again, kind of reintroducing this dynamic with Murph and Harry of her not quite trusting him, which longest slow burn ever. And that's all I'll say about it. But overall, knowing the fact that Harry was going to still be alive, and finding out that it was a combination of Uriel and Mab and Demon Reach is so interesting. And I am curious to see how that's going to continue to play out in the story now. Now that we've kind of gotten rid of the Red Court, and see how these pieces line up and why all of these people are investing in Harry. I mean, we know that Demon Reach has more to offer according to Ebenezer's notebook. So there are a lot of pieces in play that are set up, and I'm really excited to continue on, especially past Cold Days, since I haven't read Skin Game or Peace Talks or Battleground. So I am really excited to see where things are gonna go. But that is really like my overall thoughts. 5 stars, loved it. Think it's such a cool book, such a cool way to pause in a series and reflect with a character and live in a different world for a little while. Chef's kiss. Hello. New day, new location. So I just realized before I started editing this vlog that we in fact had 3 books read, and that was Turncoat, Changes, and Ghost Story. So I am going to wrap this vlog up here. I have already started Cold Days, so we will pick up in the next vlog with Cold Days, Skin Game, and Peace Talks. And then our final vlog in this Dresden reading challenge series will be the last of the Dresden books that is currently out in the series, and that is Battleground. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know if Ghost Story is your favorite of the Dresden Files, or if you're somebody who just popped on here and is now kind of interested in reading the Dresden Files. I'd love to hear it. And if you're interested in more bookish and nerdish content, feel free to subscribe. I upload most Wednesdays and every Sunday. And until next time, I hope you read a good book. I hope you find some joy. And most importantly, I hope you do something to make the world a better place. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.